But just as she got to the river, the twisting pain shot through her again. She couldn't relieve herself around the river. So, holding her stomach, she slipped deeper into the bush, looking for a hidden spot. Just as she bent, she heard voices. She tiptoed forward, pushing leaves aside with trembling fingers. She moved a little closer. Then she peeped through the leaves, and her hand flew to her mouth. Queen Adaku, the king's second and much younger wife, was standing with a tall, handsome man by a large iroko tree, hugging him. Oneedo gasped and bolted. She ran back through the bush, branches scratching her arms, leaves slapping her face, but she didn't stop. The evening sun had barely begun to soften when 22-year-old Oneedo, one of the palace maids in the household of King Namdi of Umuofia, picked up her clay pot and headed for the stream. Her stomach had been rumbling since afternoon, twisting in painful knots that made her fold her arms over her belly as she walked. The path to the stream was quiet. Birds chirped lazily, and the tall trees swayed gently, as if gossiping among themselves. Oneedo just wanted to fetch water quickly and return before nightfall. But just as she got to the river, the twisting pain shot through her again, sharp, urgent, unforgiving. She froze. Not here, she whispered, scanning the area. She couldn't relieve herself around the river. Other palace workers passed there often, to the farm, or even running other errands. So, holding her stomach, she slipped deeper into the bush, pushing through the ferns and creeping plants, looking for a hidden spot. Just as she bent, another wave of pain rising, she heard voices. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but then she heard it again, soft murmurs carried by the wind. She paused, her ears alert. She didn't expect to hear voices in that quiet part of the bush. One voice even sounded very familiar. Oneedo slowly straightened, the pain in her stomach suddenly forgotten. She tiptoed forward, pushing leaves aside with trembling fingers. Whoever was talking sounded close. She hesitated. She knew she shouldn't be curious, but something about that familiar voice pulled her forward like a magnet. She moved a little closer. Then she peeped through the leaves, and her hand flew to her mouth. Queen Adaku, the king's second and much younger wife, was standing with a tall, handsome man by a large iroko tree, hugging him. Oneedo's breath caught in her throat. Her heart hammered wildly. This was the queen, the king's wife, and the man. She blinked. It was Odumegwu, the commander and head of the village warriors. Her feet shifted by mistake, and a dry twig snapped loudly beneath her. Queen Adaku jerked away from the man instantly. Odumegwu turned sharply, scanning the bush. "Who is there?" he barked. Oneedo gasped and bolted. Her legs flew before her mind could think. She ran back through the bush, branches scratching her arms, leaves slapping her face, but she didn't stop. Unfortunately, Queen Adaku had seen the palace maid uniform as she ran, so she knew it was a palace maid who had seen them. Oneedo raced toward the river, snatched her clay pot from where she dropped it, dipped it quickly into the stream, and carried it home. Her heart beat louder than the rushing water. She wasn't even feeling the stomach upset anymore. In fact, her whole body felt numb. By the time she reached the palace quarters, night had fallen. She slipped quietly into the hut she shared with 2 other maids, her mind racing. Should she tell someone? Should she pretend she didn't see anything? Before she could gather herself, the door creaked open. Queen Adaku entered, alone. Her eyes were sharp, her face stiff. She shut the door behind her gently, too gently, which frightened Oneido more than anger would have. "Oneido, my dear," the queen said calmly, stepping closer. "I hear you went to the stream this evening." Oneido swallowed hard. "Yes, my queen." Queen Adaku tilted her head. "And I hear you wandered off the path," she said, trying to confirm she was the one. Oneido's knees weakened. "My stomach was disturbing me, my queen. I didn't plan to go far." The queen smiled. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was a warning. "I know what you think you saw," she said softly. "And I want you to understand something. If you value your life, your tongue must remain still. Do you hear me?" Oneido instantly knelt. "My queen, I didn't see anything. I swear it. Your mind can rest. I will not speak of anything I do not understand." Adaku crouched beside her, lifted her chin with a cold finger. "Good," she whispered. "Keep it that way. Because, Oneido, I always deal with those who do not understand boundaries." Then she stood and left the hut. Oneido remained kneeling long after she had gone, her breath shaking, her heart heavy with fear. Before all these, before Namdi became king and Adaku became queen, Adaku was simply the daughter of Chief Akori, living a quiet life in the village of Umuofia. Namdi had grown up in the city, schooling abroad, and returning only occasionally for festivals. His father, the former king, had ruled Umuofia for over 3 decades. When old age took him, the council summoned Namdi back home. He returned with his wife, Uloma, and their 3 grown children, Obinna, Ikenna, and Adeze, the youngest. To Namdi, life felt complete. He had a loving wife. He had responsible children. He had a successful life outside the village. Becoming king was not something he desired, but destiny rarely consults anyone. After the burial rites, the elders crowned him King Namdi of Umuofia, and tradition immediately wrapped itself around his neck like a thick rope. Barely a month into his reign, the council of elders came to him with a matter they claimed was urgent. "Your wife, Chief Okoro," the eldest among them said, "is a good woman, but she is not one of us." King Namdi folded his arms. "She is my wife, the mother of my children. What is the problem?" Chief Okoro cleared his throat. "Our tradition requires that a king must marry a woman from Umuofia. A king's wife must be from his soil. Without this, the gods may not fully accept your reign." King Namdi stared at them in disbelief. They told him there and then that he needed to take a new wife, a daughter of the soil. They did not give him time to think. Within weeks, they returned with their selection. Adaku, the only daughter of Chief Akori, a highly respected elder. King Namdi, however, felt trapped. He did not love her. He did not want another wife. He hated the idea of hurting Uloma. But tradition weighed heavier than emotion. So, he reluctantly married her. That was how she became his second wife and younger queen. After Oneido caught Queen Adaku and Odumegwu that fateful evening, palace life continued as if nothing had happened. The night in the bush had been a dream Oneido desperately wanted to forget. But she couldn't. Every time Queen Adaku walked past her, Oneido's heart tightened. Every time their eyes met, her hands trembled. Fear followed her like a silent shadow. She tried to hide it, but fear has a way of showing itself in the smallest actions. Shaky hands, while sweeping and flinching whenever someone called her name. One afternoon, While she was arranging calabashes in the palace kitchen, Queen Uloma, the king's first and older wife, walked in. She observed Oneedo quietly for a moment, noticing how the girl's hands shook as she worked. "Oneedo," she called softly, "you look troubled these days. Has anyone spoken to you harshly, or is something weighing on your heart?" Oneedo forced a smile, eyes downcast. "Nothing, my queen." Queen Uloma studied her face carefully, but nodded slowly. "If ever something is wrong, remember, you can speak to me." Oneedo simply bowed her head. She wanted to talk. She wanted to scream the truth, but fear sealed her lips shut. 3 days later, the palace was thrown into sudden chaos. Drums beat urgently across the courtyard, and messengers ran in all directions. Palace workers gathered, whispering frantically. Something serious had happened. The king stepped out, flanked by guards. His face was stern. "My sacred bead," he announced loudly, "the one kept inside my chambers, is missing." Gasps filled the courtyard. The bead was no ordinary ornament. It was a royal treasure said to protect the kingdom. Losing it was a bad omen, one that could bring shame and fear across the land. "Until it is found," the king said, "no one leaves the palace." Panic spread like wildfire. Guards turned the palace upside down, searching rooms, halls, chambers, kitchens, even the gardens. Workers murmured prayers. The queens stayed in their lodges, each pretending to be calm. By evening, the bead still wasn't found. Then Queen Adaku stepped forward, her eyes cold and calculating. "My king," she said, bowing slightly. "I did not want to say this earlier, but I believe it is time." The king frowned. "Speak. This afternoon I saw Oneedo coming out of your chamber," she said loudly, ensuring everyone heard. Oneedo froze. Dozens of eyes turned to her instantly. The king's brows drew together. "Oneedo, step forward!" he roared. Oneedo's feet felt like stones as she approached. "My king, I was only there to tidy up. It is what I do every morning." Queen Adaku folded her arms. "Then she will not mind having her things searched." Oneedo looked confused for a moment, but nodded. "I do not mind, my king. I have nothing to hide." The king gestured to the guards. "Bring her belongings. Search everything." The guards saluted and hurried off. Oneedo waited, trembling but confident that nothing would be found. She didn't notice Queen Adaku's lips curl into a satisfied smile. Moments later, the guards returned with her small woven basket of clothes. They placed it in the courtyard, and everyone gathered around as they began to search. They lifted her wrappers, shook her scarves, opened every folded corner. Oneedo watched quietly, hoping they would finish soon so she could return to her chores. Then suddenly, a guard froze. His hand trembled. "My king," he said slowly, holding something up. "Look!" Gasps erupted. In the guard's hand was the sacred bead, bright, unmistakable, and shining like forbidden truth. Oneedo's mouth fell open. "No, no," she whispered, shaking her head violently. "My king, I swear on my life, I don't know how that thing entered my basket. I swear it." But Queen Adaku's voice sliced through the air. "Lies!" Oneedo stared at the bead in horror, realizing this was no accident. This was a trap, and she had walked straight into it. All eyes were on Oneedo, trembling, confused, staring at the sacred bead in the guard's hand, as if it were a serpent ready to strike. "My king!" Oneido cried again, dropping to her knees. "I swear on everything I hold dear, I did not take it. I don't know how it entered my basket. I don't know." Her words were desperate, but her voice was swallowed by the rising murmurs of outrage. Queen Adaku stepped forward with a dramatic gasp. "I always suspected this girl," she said, shaking her head as if heartbroken. "My king, this is not the first time things have gone missing in my quarters. First, it was my coral hairpin, then my ivory comb. I kept quiet because I didn't want to shame her. But now I see she has gone too far." Gasps spread like wildfire. The palace workers exchanged uneasy glances. Oneido choked on her words. "My queen, I have never, ever stolen anything in this palace. Please, you know I would never do such a thing." Queen Uloma, who had been watching quietly, stepped forward. Her face was troubled. "My king," she said softly. "Oneido has been with us for years. She has served faithfully. She has never shown any sign of dishonesty. I find this hard to believe." Oneido's eyes filled with a spark of hope, but Queen Adaku's voice cut through it like a blade. "Of course you find it hard to believe," she snapped, "because thieves hide behind good behavior. But look, the evidence is there. Inside her basket. What more do we need?" The king, King Nanamdi, clenched his jaw tightly. His anger pulsed like heat. "Oneido," he said, his voice trembling with fury. "The bead was in your belongings. My sacred bead, the one kept inside the innermost room of my chamber. How dare you? How did you even enter that inner chamber?" "I only cleaned the outer chambers," Oneido whispered, tears streaming. "I swear I never touched your sacred things. Please, my king, believe me." The king slammed his staff on the ground. "Enough!" She flinched violently. "You were trusted, Oneido. You were welcomed into my palace, and you repay us by stealing the sacred bead. A bead that protects this entire kingdom." "No, my king, please," she pleaded, crawling forward, her forehead touching the ground. Guards stepped between them, pushing her back. Everyone looked away. Queen Uloma stepped forward again, her eyes moist. "My king, I do not wish to question your judgment. But please, perhaps we should investigate further." "No investigation!" the king thundered. "The evidence is before us. Her excuses insult my intelligence." Oneido sobbed helplessly. Her hands shook. Her whole body trembled as if the ground beneath her were breaking. The king's face hardened like carved stone. "I cannot have a thief in my palace," he said coldly. "And I cannot allow such a crime to go unpunished." He lifted his staff high. "Oneido, daughter of no one, servant of my household, you are hereby banished from the kingdom of Umuofia. You will leave before the sun sets. If you ever return, your blood will stain our soil." Nout, a cry tore from Oneido's throat, sharp, broken, agonizing. The king turned to the guards. "Escort her to the borders. Now." 2 guards rushed forward and grabbed her arms, pulling her to her feet. "No! No! Please!" Oneido screamed, twisting in their grip. "I am innocent. My Queen Uloma, please help me. Please." Queen Uloma's eyes filled with tears, but she could not speak. She could not disobey the king. The guards dragged Oneido across the courtyard, while she cried, kicked, and begged, her voice echoing through the compound she had once cleaned with pride. Palace workers watched with heavy hearts. Some whispered prayers. Some looked away, unable to bear the sight. Queen Adaku, standing tall, simply clasped her hands behind her back, her expression unreadable. The gates opened. The guards pushed Onedo through the palace gates and released her at the outskirts of the kingdom. "Go," one of them muttered quietly, ashamed. "Before the king changes his mind." She stood there trembling, the red dust of the boundary road swirling around her bare feet. The guards turned back without waiting, shutting the gates behind them. Onedo remained rooted for a moment. Then the reality hit her. She was alone, banished, accused of something she did not do. Dragged away from the only home she had known, her legs weakened. Her tears began to fall slowly at first, then uncontrollably. She pressed her palm to her mouth to stifle her sobs, but they forced their way out. She cried until her voice cracked, until her throat burned, until she had no strength left. Eventually, with trembling legs, she forced herself up and continued walking, because there was nothing else she could do. Just walk, cry, and hope the darkness swallowed her pain. While Oneida wandered in tears, Queen Adaku walked through the palace courtyard with a satisfied smile, her steps light, her heart triumphant. She felt no shame, no regret, no remorse. Everything had gone perfectly. Onedo, the only person who saw her deepest secret, was gone. Queen Adaku slipped away from the palace quietly, telling her personal maid to stay behind, that she needed some time alone, like she always requested any time she was going out to meet Odumegwu. Her eyes gleamed with excitement as she made her way to the quiet, bushy area, the same secret place she had been using for months. Standing there, leaning against the bark with his arms crossed, was Odumegwu, her secret lover and commander of the warrior. When he saw her, he grinned. "Did everything go well?" "It worked," she whispered. "Onedo has been banished." Odumegwu chuckled deeply. "Well done," he murmured. "We can now plan without interference." And so they continued with their secret, forbidden affair. As for Onedo, she kept walking. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she had to keep moving, or collapse under the weight of her own pain. Her tears had dried, but the ache inside her ribs only grew stronger. She walked past 3 villages, not stopping to rest. She had no food, no water, no direction. By the time night fell, her legs felt like wood. But she kept walking. When dawn finally came, Onedo found herself inside a thick, endless forest. Her stomach growled loudly she hadn't eaten in almost 2 days. Her head began to spin, her breathing became shallow. Still, she pushed forward. At some point, her vision blurred. The trees began to sway like living shadows. Her knees, with a soft gasp, Onedo collapsed onto the forest ground. Everything went dark. Hours later, or maybe minutes, she couldn't tell, the sound of footsteps rustled through the leaves. A middle-aged woman with calm eyes approached and looked down at her. She held a basket full of freshly plucked herbs and leaves. She was a healer who had come into the forest to gather herbs. The woman touched Onedo's forehead. "Burning with fever, dehydrated, exhausted," she murmured. Thankfully, she had come in company of a man whose father she was treating. She called out to him, and he stepped out from another part of the forest. She asked him to help carry Onedo. He obeyed without a word. He lifted Oneido's limp body and carried her through the forest, back to the village. Anioma village. Moments later, Oneido woke on a soft mat, wrapped in clean cloth. The scent of herbs filled the air. The healer sat beside her, stirring a small clay pot over a wooden stove. "You are awake," the woman said with a gentle smile. "Drink this." Oneido tried to speak, but her lips trembled. The healer lifted her head slightly and fed her a warm herbal mixture. Strength flooded her body slowly, life returning to her veins. "What happened?" Oneido whispered. "I found you in the forest," the healer replied. "My name is Mama Ifunanya. I am a herbalist. You were very weak." Oneido's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Mama." Ifunanya patted her hand. "Rest first. When you are stronger, you can tell me your story." To have I'm. Days passed. Oneido regained her strength, little by little. Mama Ifunanya fed her, treated her fever, cleaned her wounds, and watched her with the patience of a mother. Finally, when Oneido could sit properly, the healer asked, "Now, my child, who are you? And why were you alone in that forest?" Oneido burst into tears instantly. She told Mama Ifunanya everything, how she was unjustly accused of stealing the king's beads and how she was banished without fair hearing. But she didn't mention that she had caught the queen in company of another man. She went on to swear to Mama Ifunanya that she didn't know how the bead got into her things. "I believe you, Mama," Ifunanya said gently. "Life is full of mysteries beyond our understanding, and this is just one of them. But you are safe now." Oneido sobbed quietly. "Where will I go? I have no home. I was taken in as a slave and eventually made a maid in the palace." "Mama," Ifunanya smiled with deep warmth. "Then stay here. Stay with me. I have no daughter, and perhaps fate brought you to me for a reason." Oneido covered her mouth as tears fell again, not from sadness this time, but from relief. "Thank you, Mama. Thank you," she whispered. Weeks turned into months. Mama Ifunanya began to teach Oneido about herbalism, how to identify healing leaves, how to grind herbs, how to mix roots, how to treat fevers, infections, injuries, how to interpret signs in nature, how to connect with the spirit of the land. Oneido learned quickly, faster than any apprentice Mama Ifunanya had ever trained. She was focused, disciplined, hungry for knowledge, determined to rebuild her life. Soon, people in the village began talking. Oneido became well known. People traveled far to meet her. She treated many, saved many, comforted many. Her name began to spread. Whispers of a young healer with hands like light and wisdom beyond her years. 7 years passed since the day Oneido was dragged through the palace courtyard in tears. The palace walls forgot her name. Queen Adaku, now fully settled into her role, had given birth to a son named Obina, a beautiful boy, adored by the king. But when Obina turned 5, something unexpected happened. He suddenly fell ill. At first, the village healers believed it was something simple. But days passed, no improvement. Then weeks, still no change. Medicine men from surrounding villages were summoned. Herbalists came with their strongest roots, but nothing worked. Desperate and frightened, King Namdi ordered that his son be taken to the city hospitals. Doctors examined the child from head to toe ran series of tests, but shook their heads in confusion. Nothing seemed wrong with him medically, so they returned to the village. Fear spread through the palace like wildfire. Queen Adaku cried day and night, her nerves fraying under the weight of helplessness. Then one evening, a villager arrived breathless at the palace gates. "I bring news of a healer," he announced. "A powerful healer from Anioma land. It is said she brings the dying back to life, the hopeless back to hope." King Anamdi did not wait for the healer to be invited. He wanted his son cured immediately. "Prepare the royal carriage," he commanded. Obinna was immediately prepared for the journey. The journey was long. Adaku sat beside her son. 2 chiefs accompanied them, ensuring protection and authority. They got to Anioma village and walked through narrow paths until they arrived at a small hut with drying herbs hanging outside and smoke rising softly from a cooking fire. They waited patiently in the visitor's hut while someone went in to invite the healer. Moments later, the healer stepped out. She walked slowly, her wrapper tied firmly, her hair neatly plaited, her presence calm and dignified. Everything about her radiated strength and peace. She looked up and froze. The chiefs gasped. Queen Adaku staggered backward, her hand flying to her mouth. The healer was Oneedo, the banished maid. Oneedo stared at them in silence. Time seemed to stop. Queen Adaku finally found her voice. "Oh, Oneedo, are you the healer?" Oneedo nodded but said nothing. She simply looked from her to her son and back to her, and the question rose between them like a blade. Should Oneedo heal the boy? The story continues. Watch out for part 2.